Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much again for liking and subscribing and just making this a place where we can learn about Black history and just current events that are going on in general in our society involving Black people. And I know this is a hard conversation to talk about. However, we just cannot let this conversation die. So here I am to talk about Black history again. So today I want to talk about the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. And this is, I'm going to put some links in the description that just kind of go over and explain it a little more. But I just want to kind of touch the surface of the syphilis experiment. I think some people, like I always say, think that Black people are still angry or upset, or Black people just won't get over slavery. But I understand, I'm trying to understand, and that just some people just don't know all of the things that have gotten us here. It's not just slavery. It wasn't just Jim Crow. It wasn't just the 13th Amendment. There was so much. It wasn't just cities being burned to the ground and people being murdered and killed because they were Black. There's so much more, surprisingly, because that is a lot on its own. However, this is one of those things. This is the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment that honestly I didn't even know about until this year. And I'm just under the assumption that many people just didn't know about the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. And it's so sad, but this will be a pretty quick video. Like I said, if you want to know more about what happened to the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, there are a few documentaries out there about it. There's also some books. Yeah, let's get into it. So I want to start off by saying and explaining what syphilis is. Now, syphilis is a bacterial infection, and it's usually spread by sexual contact. Now, that's important to know because I'll just get into it. So I have my phone here with me because I don't want to miss, this is just extremely important. And so if I look down, just know I'm just looking at my phone. The Tuskegee syphilis study actually happened from 1932 to 1972. The thing that is so really heartbreaking about this is that, one, it lasted 40 years. And this study, this testing, this experiment involved just Black men. And so what happened is these men were actually told that the study was to test for bad blood. So the study was to test for bad blood. So it was to test for syphilis, anemia, fatigue. But what was happening was they were actually putting syphilis inside of these men. So that in turn they offered them free medical exams, burial insurance, and this was only projected to last 6 months. It was only projected to last 6 months, and it ended up lasting 40 years. 40 years where these men were being told that their blood was being tested, but in all actuality they were being infected with syphilis. And like I said in the beginning, syphilis is contracted through sexual contact. And so what was happening was these men were contracting syphilis. An antibiotic came out in the 1940s, and then they weren't treating them with the antibiotic that was created to treat syphilis. So they lied to them about what they were doing in the beginning. An antibiotic came out, and then they weren't treating them for it. And then what was happening was these men with their wives or girlfriends or whatever, they were remember, it's contracted through sexual contact. And so they were having children, and their wives and their babies were contracting syphilis because it was injected inside of them. And so in 1973, okay, this is what's crazy to me, is that my husband was born in 1978. So he was born only 5 years, guys, 5 years after the syphilis experiment had ended. That blows my mind because I think a lot of times we see these black and white pictures of like Dr. Martin Luther King or the civil rights movement, where it's like we think this thing is so long ago that the mistreatment has just been so far away, and it's just bringing up the past and things like that. But I mean, my father-in-law, they're still alive. There's so many people that are still alive today that could have been a part of this experiment, and they're not that old. It's like, my husband's 42, and I mean, a 20-year-old during that time would be 60-something right now, in their 60s. I mean, that just seems insane to me, that I think seeing a black and white picture, which a lot of us have seen in school, in our minds, you know, we think of black and white, we think of a long time ago. I graduated from high school in 2007, so 13 years ago, okay? And to think that this was in at that time in 2007, these pictures in our history books were black and white. It's like this strange thing to make us think or feel or assume that these things happened so long ago, when in all actuality, they really didn't happen that long ago. And so the government was testing and infecting these people, so much so that we've had 2 presidents really apologize for it. So President Clinton and President Obama actually have made remarks regarding this experiment and how wronged these black men were done by the United States in being infected with this, and for 40 years nonetheless. And there was an antibiotic to help treat them, and they withheld the antibiotic. It's fascinating. And so what happened was, in 1973, Congress held hearings on the Tuskegee experiments, and the following year, the study's surviving participants, along with the heirs of those who died, received a $10 million out-of-court settlement. Additionally, new guidelines were issued to protect the human subjects in U.S. government-funded research projects. And then as a result of the Tuskegee experiment, many African Americans developed a lingering deep mistrust of public health officials. In part to foster racial healing, President Clinton issued a 1997 apology stating the U.S. government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It is not only in remembering that shameful past that we can make amends and repair our nation, but it is remembering that past that we can build a better present and a better future. And then the final study participant passed away in 2004. You know, some people tend to think that Black history and American history are separated. You know, I hear often people say, well, there's a Black History Month, right? Well, there's a, BET where there's, things for Black people. But if we made it white, there would be an uproar. And here's the thing, all right? Don't come for me, okay? But our world, our United States of America, has always been catered to white people. And we have to remember that race is a social construct, right? And so there was once upon a time where Irish and Italians, let's just use them as an example, were not considered white, right? But as time went on, socially, they were white. And so it was like, even though they weren't at a time considered that, even though at a time, let's just use the Irish and Italians, for example, they weren't considered white, they were discriminated against and stuff like that. As time went on, they were then considered white. The reason I bring that up is because you have things like the Tuskegee Syphilis study and the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, where this thing lasted 40 years, a time where socially my skin color is still Black. Socially, I've never been, not in a bad way, but I've never been, obviously, because I'm black, considered white. The social construct is still there, you know? It's easy to think in our minds, like, what is the big deal? You have Black History Month. You have things catered to black people. But we've had to have those things, in a sense, because it's like the side of the story of black people, let's just say, was never told in accuracy. And there's just so much, like I said, that we just don't know, you know? I truly believe that Black history is in fact American history, and it shouldn't be separated. One, because obviously you do have African Americans, right? Like you have Italian Americans and Irish Americans, and that's just our roots are African, but our nationality is American, right? I believe that while yes, Black History Month is important, we should have that, but it should be told the true, real history of our country when it involves black people. Obviously, whether bad, which a lot of it is bad, if we're being honest, but good or bad, should be told. It's yes, Martin Luther King Jr., you know, fantastic. But if we're being honest, a lot of people today that quote him wouldn't like him if he was still around. They would say that he was causing division. They would say that he was against God. They would say that he's the one who is sparking and doing these things. They wouldn't like him, which is odd to me that people quote him, and I know in those same words they wouldn't have liked him. I don't know, it's interesting. But like I said, I'm going to put the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, a couple links down in the description box. That way you can read up on it if you want to know more about it. I think it's important to, you know, learn these little tidbits. When I talk about Black history in my videos, I try to give a surface kind of explanation for them because I want us to dig deeper. I want us to research, if you want, on your own time. Because this stuff is important to know. You know, like I said, when I found out that the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment lasted until 1970s, it was mind-blowing to me because my husband was born in 1970s and he seems pretty young to me. So yeah, but thank you guys so much for continuing to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, share this with your friends. You guys are amazing. Have a blessed rest of your weekend. Love you guys. Bye.